dearie. I almost forgot about your little journalism adventure. Oh, this is just a little house frock I flew on. Yes, well, come on in. You've come to hear about the party. I'm sure you're going to be front page reporter. Oh, you're freelance. Well, third page in. Well, by the time you're done with this story, you're going to be front page for sure. Yes, party of parties. You like to, it's been remembered. Yes, not for what I thought it would be, but rather for, well, just let me tell the story. I've always had a knack for hosting, you know. I try not to judge, but when I go to other people's homes, I notice what's lacking. And then my next party, voila, my party will have it. You see, imagine with me that you've been asked to host a party for the most prestigious one to be crowned king. Well, maybe you weren't asked, actually. You were offered because you knew that this man would need to be accustomed to royal parties, and he would need someone to oversee the parties. Get my meaning? Anyway, I decided to throw this party into high gear. I wanted kind of a Martha Stewart meets Joanna Gaines kind of appearance. So I called in my servants, and I said, not a little wink of rest will you have until this party list is complete. Well, here's my party list. I have it here so that I can show you how beautifully organized this party was. Order new fabrics and pillows for reclining, royal colors, purple and gold, of course. Wax the wood of the tables until they glow. Polish the silver platters until they glisten. Prepare the fattened calf. Fatten him a little bit more than usual. Bribe the market vendors for the best fruits and vegetables. Dust off the bottles of the choicest wine. Harvest the fresh honey and use the honeycomb for renewed candles. Commission the local Mud Springs gospel band to be playing in that room softly. Hire the most skilled and stealth servants in the village so as not to be noticed as they bring in the feast. I mean to tell you, I thought of every detail, every single detail, except for one. One little minor thing. I didn't expect her. Well, no one did, really. I mean, a woman does not just walk into a dinner party of Jewish men, especially men of high importance. No. This was highly uncalled for and a breach of Jewish custom, but nonetheless, she came in. She didn't come in with a grand affair or fuss. She just kind of slipped in and walked in behind the men, and I stood there in amazement watching. What is she doing? This is my party. She's coming into my party. And then she did something unusual. She stopped right in front of Jesus, and she pulled out an alabaster flask of nard. Well, this in and of itself is not an unusual custom. I mean, it's to honor and anoint those who are of power, prestige, and position. So this was quite normal, but she carried it a little bit too far. Yes, she began to pour out the whole bottle of oil. Now, she didn't just pour, she actually broke the flask. This was an alabaster flask, and she began to just pour out enormous amounts upon his head. Now, I stood there in amazement. I was frozen. I wanted to thrust myself forward. Doesn't she know what she's doing? Every Jewish woman knows what that meant. Let me break this down for you. This was an heirloom. This had been something that had been passed down from generation to generation. The expense was enormous, and the amounts that she was pouring was extravagant, to say the least. She knew that she was pouring out her very security and significance. Her happiness and future well-being were in this little vial, and she had broke it and was just pouring out all her worth. Women in our day, well, they were not valued in this flask. Her very value, her very life was in this flask, and she was just pouring it out. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to save what little bit I could. I wanted to reserve what sort of dignity she might have left, but I was frozen, just standing in amazement. To my astonishment, my state was broken by, well, wouldn't you know it, Peter. He stood up and he knocked over the fruit platter that took me 2 hours to arrange. Thank you, Peter. And then James and John, well, they bumped and jabbed one another and spilled the wine all over the fresh fabrics. And oh, my party was becoming such a fiasco, and the noises began to just rise in the voices, and and the music, the gospel band was clashing, and all of a sudden the furious noises, it was just coming to a shouting match as they were saying, the ointment, she's wasting the ointment. They could sell this. They were pointing their fingers and saying, shame on you. And then Jesus, he raised his hand and he said, leave her alone. Gently but firmly, just leave her alone. It was quite reminiscent, of when he was asleep in the boat, and these same men who are now were hollering then, help us, Jesus, help us, we're going to drown. And he said, peace, be still. The waves and the wind obeyed him. There was a great calm, and just like that sea, things were a quiet hush over the room. Well, I have recorded here all that he said. I wanted to make sure I got it verbatim. Jesus said, leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me, for you will always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them, but you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly, I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told of it in her memory. Even now, the fragrance of that nard perfume fills my senses. I puzzle at the words. As the scene plays over and over in my head, I can see the angry faces of the men. The woman crumpled at Jesus' feet. The oil dripping down his hair mingled into his beard, and his serene face calm and quiet as he accepts this gift she's offering. It was almost as if he knew Friday was coming. Oh, silly me, he did know Friday was coming. At the time he proclaimed those statements, it was as if he was speaking in riddles. Nothing made sense. He was going to be our king, and he was speaking of him, not being there, that we'd have the poor forever. Don't get me wrong, he loved the poor. But he knew that our days, our time here on earth with him, with his physical body, were coming to an end. Her outpouring of love, her demonstration, was an example for all of us. He knew that this act of service was her preparing his body for his burial. His closer in the whole speech. Well, first it made me mad. The careless words, to think that she would forever be linked with the gospel. My party should be linked with the gospel. But she would be the one to be remembered. And I understand now, as she poured out all her love, she was taking on the very identity of Jesus, the identity of the gospel. In just a few days, he would be pouring out all of his love for us by the shedding of his blood on the cross. It's still difficult to comprehend. Oh, I might have done things differently if I had known then what I know now. But we live and learn. I might have been more like that woman. I still get a catch in my throat every time I hear Jesus' words. She has done what she could. She has done what she could. As I mulled over this phrase and the meanings, the reality hit me. She has done what she could. I only did what I wanted. She had done all she could, but I only did what I wanted. She extravagantly poured out to love, to give love. I extravagantly poured out to receive love. I gave from reserve, but she gave unreservedly. It's interesting to me how the world can only accept a moderate love for Jesus. Yet it was he who abundantly, exceedingly, crazily, extravagantly poured out his love for us on the cross. Hitherto and forward, we too shall love Jesus, never again in moderation, only in extravagance.